Legal Eagle's a pretty big channel. The video is titled "The Most Important Election of Our Lifetimes."
This is likely to be the most important election of our lifetime. This is not hyperbole. Never have the stakes been higher, but neither has the choice been so easy to make. This is a video that I dreaded I would have to make. I was really looking forward to the possibility that the Republican nominee would be anyone other than Donald Trump. If it had been Mitt Romney, Nikki Haley, or even Ron DeSantis, this video endorsement would have simply explained that you should vote for whoever you wanted based on your policy preferences, because from a legal perspective, it would have been safe to vote for either candidate. And it was going to be gloriously clickbaity with probably the same title and thumbnail that I used here. But unfortunately, this isn't that video because the Republicans nominated Donald Trump. Again. Others will explain the policy differences between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump. But that's not the point of this video. I have very strong policy preferences, and while they do come out from time to time because law is the result of politics, this video's endorsement is not based on those policy preferences.
What are Legal Eagle's policy preferences? Is he more like conservative, liberal? I'd assume he'd be like center left.
And when I talk about a policy matter, I'm talking about the laws that a president might sign or the actions they might take, things that they can legitimately do under our system of governance. And those preferences are partisan, and that's fine. Reasonable minds can differ about those policies. But this is not about policy. This is about the law itself. This is an endorsement based on the law from a group of lawyers based on their experience and knowledge of the law, and it's about the preservation of our democracy. So, not to bury the lead, Legal Eagle cannot endorse Donald Trump for president. For the good of our country, the right vote is for Vice President Kamala Harris. Donald Trump represents an affront to the law. Kamala Harris will uphold the law. This election is a choice between a criminal or a prosecutor. And I'd like to explain why this distinction is the only one that matters in this election. Because Donald Trump represents a credible threat to the rule of law, free speech, and free elections. And without the rule of law, free speech, and free elections, the rest simply doesn't matter. At that point, your policy preferences are irrelevant. We believe that if you care about the rule of law, the even-handedness of our governmental and judicial systems, and want to make sure that your vote counts in the future, you cannot vote for Donald Trump in this election.
I think those are actually three really good points to go from. So I talked to progressives about Palestine, for example, and I say, if we are debating in America simple freedoms and liberties, and we're talking about, do polio vaccines work? Should we have fair elections? Do we need a dictator? Is free speech okay? Should Donald Trump be putting people in camps and violating every human right imaginable? If we have those discussions in America, we are so many steps away from Americans caring about Palestine. We need to make sure our elections are fair, we have civil freedoms, and we need to make sure the political process works as intended. And if that does not happen within America, and you hear like progressives say, it's selfish for you to value American policies over foreign or domestic policies. It's not really how that works. You know, it doesn't work like, oh, we can just do good domestic policy and good foreign policy, or we could do like good foreign policy and bad domestic policy. We need to have a good domestic structure, or this country will never have good foreign policy. But whenever something like that happens, we try to skip all the steps. So I do like how he frames that.
And I'd like to make the case that if you do care about the rule of law, Kamala Harris is the only choice. First, not to state the obvious, but Trump is a criminal who has no respect for the law and seeks to flaunt the law for his personal gain. Trump is a convicted felon many times over. Trump paid off an adult film actress to stop her from going public with their relationship and then falsified business records to hide a violation of election law. A jury convicted him of all 34 charges related to the incident, which was meant to influence the outcome of the 2016 election. Sentencing has been delayed because of the election. Additionally, Trump sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll, then repeatedly defamed her. After Carroll won 2 lawsuits against Trump, the judge ruled that the jury had found that Trump's actions were considered rape according to the common definition of the word. Trump's apparent success as a businessman was built on fraud and a total disregard for the law. Earlier this—
Bro, it's insane that our Justice Department did not move sooner on Donald Trump. I don't know what they were thinking, what Merrick Garland was thinking. Like, the fact they started the trial when they did, to the point where it would be delayed until after the election, where if Donald Trump wins, he'll walk free, and if he loses, he'll probably be in jail, or whatever. Be found guilty, whatever the process would have ended up as. I can't believe we waited this long. Was it procedural? Was there a reason that Merrick Garland did not bring something sooner with like Jack Smith, and we just had an independent counsel? Like, is there a reason we didn't move on that when we could have actually done something about Donald Trump and trying to steal the election?
This year, a New York court ruled that Trump fraudulently misrepresented his financial figures to get cheaper loans and other benefits. This went on for decades. Trump is now banned from serving as an officer and director of any New York corporation. He was barred from taking out loans from a New York bank, and now must pay hundreds of millions of dollars in fines. And there are...
Those are all the charges that people say are politically motivated, by the way. All these business-related charges.
myriad of other cases. Trump was forced to pay $25 million to students who attended Trump University because the real estate seminars were a scam. Trump is banned from running a charity in New York because he misused charity funds for his political campaign. And that list of verdicts, settlements, and convictions is likely to grow substantially. Trump was indicted for illegally retaining highly classified defense documents and obstruction of justice. The most serious charge against Trump is that he retained national defense information, which is a violation of the Espionage Act.
Bro, Trump tried doing Trump University like Andrew Tate did Hustlers University and couldn't do it, but Andrew Tate could. That's so sad. How was Andrew Tate so successful at doing the Hustlers University thing, but Trump was so bad at it? Is it because Andrew Tate's not an American citizen, so he has no less laws to abide by?
Trump kept these secret documents at his private club, a place that has been described as a haven for spies. Trump was indicted in Washington, D.C. for conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights, all in an effort to overturn the 2020 election results. In Georgia, Trump was charged with committing a range of crimes related to the 2020 election in that state, including racketeering, solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer, and false statements. And Trump has been impeached twice. First, related to Ukraine. Trump's first impeachment occurred following a House inquiry that determined that he solicited foreign interference in his re-election bid, and Trump obstructed the investigation by instructing his administration officials to disregard subpoenas for documents and testimony. Trump tried to force Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden by withholding military aid. And Trump also tried to promote a conspiracy theory that Ukraine, not Russia, was responsible for interfering in the 2016 presidential election. And his second impeachment was incitement to insurrection. The House of Representatives impeached Trump for encouraging his supporters to storm the Capitol in an attempt to disregard the certification of the 2020 presidential election. Now, obviously, both times he escaped conviction in the Senate, but remember, impeachment is a political remedy, not a legal one. But the Trump bipartisan impeachments were unprecedented. And even Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell suggested that Trump should be convicted in court regardless of the impeachment in Congress. There's a disturbing pattern of Trump's crimes. They are explicitly intended to subvert the democratic process. Trump has run for president 3 times in the last decade, and each time he's tried to illegally and improperly influence the outcome of the election. In 2016, Trump engaged in the hush money scheme to prevent news of his affair with Stormy Daniels from going public. And the Mueller report documents the many contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian operatives, concluding that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election by waging social media disinformation campaigns and by hacking the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
The report also...
Bro, I forgot about that. I really forgot that he was asking Russia to find emails about Hillary Clinton at that time. That's wild.
Details 10 instances where Trump attempted to interfere with the investigation and obstruct justice. 34 individuals and 3 companies were indicted because of the Mueller report, including Trump allies Roger Stone, Mike Flynn, and Paul Manafort, who you will recall was Trump's campaign chairman. If a man is judged by the company that he keeps, Trump has surrounded himself with corruption. His 2016 campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, and vice chairman Rick Gates were convicted of conspiracy against the United States. His advisors, Roger Stone, Peter Navarro, and George Papadopoulos, committed obstruction of justice, contempt of Congress, and making false statements. Trump Organization CFO, Alan Weisselberg, was convicted of tax fraud. Trump's national security advisor, Mike Flynn, lied under oath. Chief strategist Steve Bannon was convicted of contempt of Congress, and that's only the beginning of his troubles. His former personal attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen, was convicted of campaign finance violations. His fundraiser, Elliot Broidy, went down for corruption and bribery. Even his lawyers, Ken Chesebro, Jenna Ellis, and Sidney Powell, pleaded guilty to crimes related to the 2020 election.
Literally every aspect of Donald Trump's life has been filled with crime and fraud. And right now, John Kelly came out talking about Donald Trump praising Hitler and Hitler's generals. And there are people, including Trump, calling John Kelly weak, someone who served in our forces, armed forces for 45 years, a 4-star general, Gold Star father. His son died in Afghanistan. He's been a conservative. Donald Trump's chief of staff. We have Milley. We have Mike Pence. We have them all saying that Donald Trump is this terrible person who should never be president. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is saying in the same sentence, Kelly, remember, 45 years in service, to our country, saying Kelly is weak, pathetic, and a bully. and should not be respected. And in the same sentence, saying that Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin and other dictators should be respected because they are powerful and rule their citizens with an iron fist. And Donald Trump wishes America could be like that. It's wild how much bad things, how bad, like it's so everywhere he turned, everywhere you go in Donald Trump's life, it's fraud, it's fake. He's not even a businessman. You know, the entire Apprentice show was a characterization, was a character, was someone acting. He was an actor. He wasn't even a real businessman, but that's his entire persona. It's so amazing how this person, who is so fabricated and so fake, was able to captivate so many people in America.
And unbelievably, on his way out the door, Trump granted clemency to his corrupt political advisors Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, Steve Bannon, and George Papadopoulos. In 2020, Trump did everything he could to overturn the results of that election, even if that meant disenfranchising millions of voters. He pressured the governor and secretary of state of Georgia to find him votes, just enough to win. And not for nothing, he encouraged the riot outside and the siege inside of the US Capitol to stop the 2020 election. For the first time since 1820, the Capitol was laid siege. He encouraged the rioters to kill Mike Pence. He sought to delay the results of the election by any means necessary. And as detailed in the DC prosecution, this was only the most visible part of a larger conspiracy to make sure that the election certification never happened. As you can see, many of Trump's crimes and conduct strike at the heart of our democracy. They are both self-serving and anti-democratic. The hush money payments were meant to keep the information from hurting him in the election. The Ukrainian blackmail scheme was for the purpose of soliciting a bribe in the form of fabricating dirt on his presumptive political rival, Joe Biden.
Every accusation they make is a confession, because even when Donald Trump talks about the Hunter Biden laptop story being censored, when it wasn't censored, by the way, Twitter removed it for like a day because it was hacked materials, which is against policy, and also it had Hunter Biden's genitalia exposed through the hacked materials. But those Hunter Biden laptop documents were put right back up by Twitter. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was trying to sue people. He was making behind the backroom deals. He was trying to go talk to Ukraine to get information about Biden. He was doing so many things, paying off porn stars to prevent information from him coming out. And the Hunter Biden laptop story is about Joe Biden's son. Donald Trump was covering up stories about himself. Every accusation they make is a confession, including Donald Trump saying that the Democrats stole the election. He's the one that tried stealing the election, and he knows that.
And he conspired to bring down...
And if he becomes president, he will not be held accountable. And all of these financial fraudsters he works with, he's going to pardon all of them. He'll pardon every violent January 6th rioter. He says January 6th rioters are us and we. Donald Trump says, we didn't have guns. They had guns, they being the cops. And Donald Trump talks about Ashley Babbitt dying on January 6th, but nothing about the cops that died on that day, the police officers that were defending the Capitol. It's really funny how easily they went anti-police when the police were trying to defend the democratic process.
Congress. And here we are in 2024, and Trump is once again waging war on the democratic process. He's already declaring the election rigged against him. His running mate denies that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. His hand-picked leader in the House of Representatives won't commit to certifying the results. And he pressured Republicans in swing states to pass legislation and rules preventing the states from counting votes until election night. He subverted democracy before and is trying to do it again, right in front of our faces. Which takes me to the next point. Donald Trump will destroy our core freedoms for his own personal gain. Trump frequently undermines free speech by attacking the media, individual journalists, social media platforms, and critics. He retaliated against John Bolton for writing a book, which is the ongoing subject of my lawsuit against the government. A never-sent draft resignation letter by General Mark Milley said Trump was, quote, doing great and irreparable harm to the U.S. in 2020 after police used tear gas and batons to clear protesters and journalists out of the then-president's way for a photo op in Lafayette Square. Law enforcement used tear gas because Trump was told he couldn't just shoot the protesters. He has repeatedly called the press the enemy of the people and weaponized the...
For a photo op. I forgot that was for a photo op. Again, everything's faked. Everything is fabricated. Trump wanted to do military parades because that's what fascist dictators do. All they do is show strength and anger, and they use that to cover up the corruption they're actually doing. Every dictator does this. Every authoritarian does this. And Trump is not any different.
DOJ against certain reporters. Trump said he would revoke the broadcast license of CBS, which isn't a thing you can do, because they interviewed his opponent, Kamala Harris. And Trump has a game plan if he's elected again. It's called Project 2025. Project 2025 is a bespoke manual for fascism. It lays out exactly what Trump can do, how he can do it, and who he can staff the government with. And the worst part is that it includes.
And by the way, before he talks about this, Project 2025 has been proven many, many, many times to be very involved with Donald Trump. Top Trump donors wrote the plan. J.D. Vance was the top pick for VP among the Project 2025 authors. They admitted on secret tapes, unknowingly, they admitted that Donald Trump is only saying he doesn't like Project 2025 to distance from it politically for political reasons. Trump is Project 2025. He knows about it. He helped plan it. And all the people who did plan it are controlling Trump's campaign. So if Trump tries to run from that, yeah, we know we know you did that, Trump.
There's a whole bunch of things that are arguably legal, but are just old-timey fascism. Trump wants to do one of those one weird tricks, but for ending civil liberties. For example, the Comstock Act of 1873 is a federal law that regulated the distribution of materials considered to be obscene, lewd, or immoral. The law primarily targeted materials related to birth control, abortion, pornography, and contraceptives. The law is still on the books, and Trump and his allies want to enforce it once again to ban medical abortions and contraceptive and criminally convict doctors. And then there's the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, one of the 4 laws known collectively as the Alien and Sedition Acts, passed by Congress during the presidency of John Adams. The Alien Enemies Act gave the president the authority to detain, arrest, imprison, or deport non-citizens from nations that were considered to be hostile to the United States. And Trump has said he wants to use this law to use the military on American soil to inter and deport tens of millions of immigrants. And he doesn't just want to stop there. He wants to use the Alien Enemies Act to use the military to deport legal immigrants, including Dreamers and Haitian immigrants, who are legally residing in the United States, and who...
And it's not going to be a warning. This will be violent if Trump is successful. He will violently take these immigrants who are very amazing neighbors and contributors to communities. Like Springfield, Ohio is doing better because of the Haitian immigrants who are now living there. The churches are doing better. The community has more money. Property values are going up because the entire economy there is doing better as a result of this immigration influx. If you listen to Donald Trump, you wouldn't believe that. But yeah, these people who are very Christian and religious as well, because Haiti is a country that's been through so much. And missionary trips have caused many Haitians to be, Christian. So now we have this population as well that's very adapted to the Christian lifestyle and moral system. And we have these self-proclaimed people of God and Christians hoping for a violent detainment of the Dreamers and Haitian immigrants, which is, it's so bad. It's so disgusting. And no human should be treated like that. But even by their standard, even legal immigrants are not safe. But they said at first, oh, we only want to get the illegal bad immigrants. No, they see all immigrants who are not white as bad.
I will remind you, despite the blood libel levied by Trump, did not eat any cats or dogs. That was a complete fabrication. And under the same auspices, Trump has also vowed to use the military against Democrats, who he claims are the enemies from within. You don't have to take our word for it. Many of Trump's key appointees and advisors will absolutely not vote for him in 2024. The list is vast and growing. It includes former Vice President Mike Pence, former Chair of the Joint Chiefs Mark Milley, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, former Secretary of Defense James Mattis, former Attorney General Bill Barr, former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, and former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson.
Bro, it's so scary because either people know this and they reject it and they trust this con man over these very well-known and established high-profile conservative, some are generals, some are long-term politicians, his own vice president. Either they know this information and they are rejecting all of these opinions in favor of the con man, or the propaganda is so bad that they have no idea this information even exists. They just don't know this is something that's happening, which is even just as scary.
And this is merely the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds, if not thousands more. There has never been an administration in history where so many of the people that the president himself appointed have changed their mind and stated that the president is unfit for office. In part, they recognize that Trump with full faculties was a threat to democracy. General Mark Milley called Trump, quote, a fascist to the core. But it's clear that Trump is also in mental and physical decline. His speeches are word salads. He doesn't live in the same reality that we do, and he just simply makes up facts all day long. And while losing a step when you're almost 80 is not necessarily incompatible with a successful presidency, here the lack of mental faculty means he's more likely to be taken advantage of by his advisors and more quickly to jump to authoritarian tactics. History has shown that Donald Trump will always take the easy road, and in a second term, there won't be anyone to curb those tendencies. Which brings us to the economy. Economic policies are usually based in policy preferences. There are some who welcome Trump's plan to place tariffs on all foreign goods. In other words, a sales tax of up to 200% on anything made outside of the United States, a tax that you, the consumer, would pay, which would cause all Americans to pay thousands more per year. In one instance, an iPhone might cost as much as $4,000.
And calling tariffs a tax on other countries is like calling sales tax a tax on the company you're buying from. We know that sales tax is a tax for us. When you look at your receipt, it shows your total, and then it shows your total after tax is added. That's how tariffs work as well. But they call it tariffs, and Trump calls it a tariff to avoid what that actually means if he does it across the board, which is a national sales tax in effect.
More per year. In one instance, an iPhone might cost as much as $4,000. And then, of course, other countries would retaliate by levying the same tariffs on US goods, which would kill US exports. But that's not necessarily illegal. But those who think that Trump would be better for the economy fail to take into consideration the effect of Trump's lawlessness on this country and the economy. The only other economic plan that he talks about would be to deport tens of millions of immigrants, many of whom came to this country as children and lived as Americans for decades.
And they work very important jobs that are very low wage, and deporting them would cost a lot of money and also cause extreme inflation too. It's really funny that Donald Trump, when talking about the economy, and the point that was just made about destabilization, the market doesn't like uncertainty or chaos. Donald Trump's two policies he's proposing, and inflation has gone down a lot. Policies from Biden and Harris have worked amazing. But the only two policies Trump does have, the deportation, which is funny to even say as a policy, and tariffs, are two of the most inflationary policies you can think of. If I had to think of two policies to raise prices more, I wouldn't be able to. Those are the top two price raising policies you can think of.
This policy, while likely completely infeasible, would also be a disaster for the economy and do next to nothing for high prices. But more importantly, Trump's destruction of the rule of law, free speech, and free elections would itself be terrible for the economy. Individuals and businesses rely on the notion that government will apply the law even-handedly, and they even require the freedom to be critical of the government without fear of government reprisal. And they need to know that when a politician is voted out of office, they will leave peacefully. And they need to know that a politician will not use the office for personal gain at the expense of their country, unlike Trump, who steered government and foreign contracts to his own businesses, like the Trump Hotel, and then promptly sold that when he left office. When you take away free speech rights, property rights, and fair elections, and then add in graft and crony capitalism for the president and their friends,
Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, got $2 billion from Saudi Arabia for some type of investment fund after he did no investing before. Donald Trump cut so many deals with other countries for money. Just like he did in every other job he ever had in business. He never had a job, but just like Trump did everywhere in life, every aspect of life, he did that in the White House too.
You have a recipe for economic disaster, apart from the legal disaster in and of itself. Imagine Germany in 1932, Venezuela in 2005, or Hungary in 2010. Let's not add the United States in 2024 to that list. Countries with strong legal systems attract more foreign investment. Businesses need to trust that contracts will be upheld, and they need to know that their success doesn't depend on whether they personally like the president or not. Trump has threatened CEOs who don't support him. He gave contracts to his friends. He filled his White House with nepotistic advisors, and specifically his son-in-law exploited his position to personally enrich himself. At base, Trump's advantage on the economy is an illusion. Which takes me to my final point. This time, it's different. Obviously, we saw what a Trump presidency can look like. He was president for 4 years. So why is this the most important election of our lifetime? Well, this time there are no guardrails. There is no deep state, but there are long-held institutions. The career bureaucrats and political appointees with half a conscience who pushed back against Trump's worst impulses. And sometimes it worked. His own advisors would slow walk his craziest ideas. But Trump learned his lesson, which is why Project 2025 is so frightening. But Project 2025 vows to remove over 1 million federal employees and would replace expert and nonpartisan civil servants with a raft of political loyalists. We've all taken it as a given at this point that if Trump is elected, he would end the many active DOJ investigations and prosecutions into himself on day one. And frankly, it's frightening that we all just assume that he's going to do that at this point. But if he does, that would likely result in mass resignations at the Department of Justice. And Trump would relish that and simply install political loyalists instead. Heck, he might do it even without the resignations. Yes, he was impeached twice, but he was also acquitted twice. Congress will not stop the next President Trump.
Yeah, also, the entire global fracture that happens if Trump gets into office, like China taking Taiwan, Russia taking Ukraine, more border disputes if Trump leaves NATO, for example, the entire world is going to go in a dramatic, very negative direction if Donald Trump becomes president. And it's very scary. It actually is genuinely scary.
And in the interim, the Supreme Court not only granted sweeping immunity, but it basically laid out an instruction manual on how to do all of the above. Want to use your Department of Justice to prosecute your enemies for no reason? Fine, you're totally immune. What's that? You want to shoot your political rival? Don't be silly. Just bomb them with an F-35. Now it's
I forgot they actually presented these arguments in court. The things Trump would have the ability to do legally under the Supreme Court's new guidance with the immunity is so scary, bro. Oh, man.
totally legal and totally cool. The current Supreme Court says have at it. The guardrails that once existed to keep Trump's worst impulses in check are simply gone. A second-term President Trump would gut the administrative state and fill it with political cronies. Congress will rubber stamp everything that he does. The Supreme Court will continue to say that almost everything he does is immune. And Trump will claim that any election that he loses is illegitimate. There's only one guardrail left. A vote so overwhelming he can't dispute it. So that brings me...
Bro, that's not giving me confidence at all. That gives me no confidence. Oh, no.
to my closing argument.
The undecided voters in like 5 states, the final people making their decision, who are going to like watch a TikTok that morning and decide who they're going to vote for. These people are the final check and balance on an authoritarian U.S. government. Oh, man, that's beautiful. That made me feel great.
Vote so overwhelming he can't dispute it. So that brings me to my closing argument. Vice President Harris is the only sane choice in this election. She is a former state prosecutor and state attorney general. She believes in free and fair elections and in free speech. This election is a choice between law and criminality. As senator, Harris grilled Trump Attorney General Bill Barr about whether he ever opened an investigation because Trump asked him to attack his enemies. And this is a key point because as Attorney General, Barr eroded the rule of law himself, though he has now changed tunes. He misrepresented the Mueller report's findings and shut down an investigation into whether Trump took a $10 million bribe from Egypt to fund his 2016 campaign. And I do not believe Harris will appoint an attorney general who weaponizes the Department of Justice the way that Trump has. I believe that Harris will support Supreme Court justices who preserve the rule of law and not grant sweeping immunity to the single most criminal president. I believe she will only nominate judges who the American Bar Association says are qualified. And while this is a low bar, Trump can't clear that bar as he nominated 10 judges who the ABA rated as completely unqualified. And I believe it is highly likely that she will not destroy the rule of law. It is highly likely that she will actually uphold the rule of law.
Yeah, but the issue is many people only see the rule of law applying to non-white people, and especially if they are not from America. So right now, many Trump voters, no matter if they make tons of money, a little bit of money, if you're a Trump supporter, race and xenophobia and just being afraid of other things, being afraid of the world is your driving reason for voting. So the moral of this video here is pretty much if you have any type of reasonable head on your shoulders, okay? You need to vote for Kamala Harris. If you want to have any chance at a good life in America, you need to vote Kamala Harris. If you don't, the next 8 years of American life is going to be terrible, and the next 50 years of American life is going to be greatly reduced in its potential. And that means we cannot confront huge human catastrophes that we need to confront as soon as possible, as we're fighting this problem on American soil for our government.
And saying that out loud, I can't believe how low the bar is, but that's where it's been set. There it is. You have the choice between someone who will promote free and fair elections, promote core freedoms, and uphold the rule of law versus a wannabe dictator. Now, I'm sure many of you already agree with Harris's policy positions, and for those people, you're already convinced of her bona fides. And to those people, all I will say is go out and vote. Elections are won by turnout. Please do whatever you can to vote this year and convince your friends to do the same and not sit on the sideline. But for those of you that disagree with some or all of Harris's policy choices, I hear you. I also don't agree with everything that she espouses. But Kamala Harris appears to be running as a fairly standard Democratic president, both small d and big D Democratic. Even if you hate Democratic policies, a normal Democratic president is better than a fascist Republican. A president who agrees with every single one of your policy positions but has this one thing where he destroys the government isn't really worth it. And even if you didn't get everything you wanted out of the last 4 years, or even if you hate Joe Biden, wasn't it nice having a normal person in the White House instead of a crazy weirdo? Wasn't it nice not waking up to deranged tweets and chaos? It's not
It was nice over the past few years, but Elon Musk and a bunch of other billionaires made sure that everyone's social media environments went crazy. So no one actually felt that calm. No one felt the actual economy. The propaganda state right now being orchestrated by Elon Musk through X and Peter Thiel and all these guys. It is really distorting public perception for many of these people. And I'd assume if you're voting Trump, you're a victim of it. You've been indoctrinated into this cult, and this cult of thinking. Really scary.
Not a given.
And the mainstream media has not done good at covering Trump's faults. They have not done good at all covering inflation. I saw them compare wage growth. They compared wage growth since like last September and inflation from the early 2021. And it's like they're just comparing numbers that make no sense to drive this idea that Biden was a bad president to create more conflict and more news stories. And right now they're not holding Trump accountable nearly enough for the deranged things he's saying about like killing political opponents.
It is frighteningly possible that if Trump is elected again, there is no coming back from this. Many of our institutions held back Trump's worst instincts, and it's possible that they might again. But he, and more importantly, his radical advisors, learned their lessons and won't make the same mistakes twice. 2020 was a trial run. This time the restraints are gone. This really is an election between a felon and a prosecutor. Donald Trump is a clown. But he's a clown with a gun. And even a clown can be dangerous, sometimes especially so. And this clown would have the nuclear codes and the DOJ. I think that there is a non-zero chance that he would use the Department of Justice and the US military against Americans who criticize him, against ordinary Americans who he calls the enemies from within. I think that because he keeps saying explicitly that. So whatever your policy preference on the left or the right, I promise you, it is more
And whenever they ask Donald Trump about it, he like triples down on it and goes even harder.
important to preserve the rule of law. So hopefully for the last time, Legal Eagle makes a presidential endorsement for this year's election. Legal Eagle wholeheartedly endorses Kamala Harris for President of the United States. Now go out and vote, because it could be your last.
That's scary, bro. And I know it's something we've all been thinking about. I've said these exact words, but hearing someone who also has a legal background and who believes this wholeheartedly, it really is like you look at what Trump can do and you look at ways to stop him and prevent him from destroying the entire world, not only America. And there's really not many defenses except for Election Day. And that's very frightening, very scary. And yeah, we will be in like a Great Depression if he gets in office. Instantly. There will be worldwide conflicts like we haven't seen in a while. It's all been gearing up to this. The only way to stop it is if Kamala Harris wins. So that's why this is pretty shocking to even watch and experience, but here we are. We got to get out of it somehow.